colored cardstock or white cardstock? This is always a dilemma in my craft room. Whenever I want to make a card, I always choose between using the white cardstock for the background or a colored cardstock for the background of my card. And whichever color I settle on makes a huge difference. In this video, I'll show you two options side by side featuring a colored cardstock background and a white cardstock background with the same supplies so that you can decide for yourself. Before we jump into this video, scroll to the comments section and let me know if you are team colored cardstock or team white cardstock. Hi everyone, I'm Yana, a card maker on YouTube, and in this video, we're making something pretty. I'm creating with the fabulous Sweet Harvest products from Altenew. Here is a look at the stamp set from the Sweet Harvest project kit. Now, this project kit includes a whole bunch of other products. You can see some of them on the back of this packaging here. I'll also pop a link to the website where you can see all the other products included in this kit. I am only working with the stamp set, the coordinating stencil, and the coordinating die set. By the way, all of Altenew stamp sets have absolutely amazing packaging. So this is the packaging for the stamp set, and you can open it up. You can see card ideas on the inside along with ink selections, the Altenew ink options, and you can see little instructions on how to use other products in the kit. Like the stencil, it shows you how you can use the stencil. As always, I have a special offer for you in this video. You can get $8 off on orders of $79 or more. You need to use my exclusive code Yana8 off. You can see the code on the screen. I also have it in my video description and get your discount. This code is valid from November 7th to November 9th. I have the exact time and date in my video description, so make sure to check that. Again, use my link and enjoy shopping. This code cannot be combined with any other promo code, but it's a great offer and I encourage you to take advantage of it to save on your favorite crafting supplies. Here I have my stamp wheel along with a sheet of Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. The cardstock is, this is half of a letter sheet. So I had my letter sheet cut in half. So this now measures 5.5 by 8.5 inches. And this is pretty good size. This image, to me, this is an apple branch. So this is a pretty good size image. It would work beautifully for so many card sizes. You can do A2, landscape portrait. You can do 5x7 landscape portrait. You can do slimline or mini slimline. Today, I'm making a mini slimline. I'm sort of reinventing the mini slimline card size for myself, and I can't stop making cards in that size. So we will be making mini slimline card, but again, this image works really well for other card sizes as well. I'm next going to work on adding color using the stencil. Now the stencil includes 4 stencils. There are 2 layers to ink blend the image that we just stamped, and there are also 2 additional stencils that you can use to create backgrounds. And they're very, very clever. You can see one example on the back of the stencil packaging, and then there is another example where you can overlap the 2 wonky line stencil designs and create sort of like a wonky gingham pattern. Really cool. I didn't do any of that because I had a slightly different idea in mind, but I still wanted to mention those. Now the stencil, the 2 layers to ink blend our apple, they are divided into sections. I showed you this in my previous Altenew video where we were ink blending with another product from Altenew. And I really like this about Altenew stencils. Instead of having 3 layers for the leaves, we have just one stencil and it is separated by lines. So you need to pay attention. You need to be careful. You need to identify those lines on the stencil. Here I used a black marker and I drew these lines so you guys can see them better. You don't need those lines there. I just drew them to illustrate that there are different sections and each section is labeled. There's A1, A2, and A3. So this makes it very easy to ink blend the leaves for our harvest, for our apple. So when you get your stencil and when you stamp your image, and you try to align your stencil over the image, keep in mind that there are different sections to the stencil and you need to be careful so that you do not over ink blend. You just need to do some masking. You'll see what I mean in just a second. Yes, it is better to have separate stencil layers for the separate images, but by doing the stencils this way, I feel that Altenew is able to offer us a better price point for these stencils. So you will just need to do a little bit of masking. Here you can see me positioning the leaves layer on my image. I have the grip mat in the background. I have my paper sticking to the mat. I then position my stencil, and I'm going to use a bit of the satin tape to mask my paper. So I'm first going to ink blend the A1 section. It's the one on the left-hand side. And because I'm a messy ink blender, I know I will get ink all over my paper. So I'm making sure to mask, to tape over the areas where I don't need to add the ink. I'm using 2 colors of ink. This is the swamp green and a large blending brush to add the first color onto my leaves. Next, I'm coming in with the green opal, which is a darker green, and I'm adding a little bit of shading at the base of each leaf. If you want to be creative, you can bring additional green ink colors and do different colors of ink for the different leaves. You could even do leaves in not just green. They can be teal, they can be pink, they can be all sorts of different colors. It's your card. You can make your card whatever color you want. I really like the look of pink and green, where there's a lot more green and just a little bit of pink. It's a really cool color combination, and I like how pink stands out on the green. So this is the color combo that I'm going for today. With the first section of leaves blended, I repositioned my stencil and I'm now ink blending the A2 section using the same colors. The ink blending really does not take a lot of time. There's not a lot of pieces to this image, and I really love that we now have stencils and that these stencils allow us to create these beautiful ink blended images that look like they were colored and really took hours to make. I remember the coloring days, you guys. I used to love to color, but coloring a card like this, coloring an image of this size would really take a lot of time, and there's no way I would be able to create multiples. So before, it was just like one and done, one unique card. Now, because we have these stencils, we can easily make multiples. We can replicate the design, mass produce the design. So yay for having the coloring stencils. Now for the A3 layer, so this is like the second grouping of leaves, I decided to do a slightly different green, and now I'm using Mossy Meadow. On the finished card, you'll see that these 2 greens are pretty much the same, and there's not a lot of color variation between the leaves, although I am bringing a slightly darker green, or I should say a much darker green. I'm using the oak moss to add shading on these leaf layers, and that really adds a lot of the darker green, and I like that. I love to have a lot of contrast on my images. I love to have a lot of shading, a lot of shadows, like deep dark shadows. I love to have highlights, and I'm able to achieve that by using a lighter green and a very, very dark green. If you want to, you could even come in with possibly a little bit of black or maybe a little bit of the dark brown to darken the shadows on those leaves even more. And check it out. I love the way these leaves look. This looks like it took me hours to create, but to be honest, this actually took less than 10 minutes to ink blend. Next, I have my second layer, and the second layer again has 2 sections. There is a section to ink blend the branch, and I'm using brown inks for the branch. The Rocky Shore is my lighter brown, and then I have a espresso ink. This is my darkest brown. I'm using a detail blending brush. I have like an angled blending brush, and I'm going to use that to add a little bit of that darker brown to the branch. You could also have a green branch if you want, but I decided I wanted to bring a little bit of brown because this is one of those colors that works really well with green and pink. All of these are the colors that you can see in nature, and I often turn to nature when I'm looking for color combinations. So when you imagine you are walking I don't know, in a forest and there's a lot of brown because you have a lot of trees. There's obviously a lot of green. And imagine that there are, it's spring and the trees are blooming and the blooms are pink. So this is sort of like the color combination idea that I have. Okay, the layer with the apples, by the way, these can be made into peaches too. I think you can make them anything you want. So this also has like 2 sections. You will need to ink blend one section, reposition your stencil, and then ink blend the second section. I'm using pink diamond as my lightest pink. Next, coming in with Pinkalicious. This is my medium pink. And I will finish my apples by using Rubelite. You don't really see pink apples in real life, but it's a card and I can have my apples be any color I want. I'm using a variety of blending brush sizes to make it easier to apply the ink quickly. But for the most part, you just need a large blending brush and a small blending brush, and that works really well. So here I have the first 2 apples blended. If you notice, I have a little bit of directional ink blending. So I'm starting with the lightest ink, the pink diamond, and I bring this color from the bottom up. So the top section is where I have my highlight and the bottom section is where I'm going to have the most saturated color. This is how I would color this image if I were using coloring mediums. So whenever I use my ink blending brushes and inks, I try to do the same. I try to envision the source of light. I try to envision which section of an image is going to be darker, and I try to ink blend in the same way. And ta-da, our image is done. It's so beautiful. I just love how crisp and vibrant and beautiful this looks. There is a coordinating die available to cut this image out, and I highly recommend you grab the coordinating die because using dies makes our life that much easier. I don't remember the last time when I was fussy cutting something out. It's definitely not something like this where you have so many details. I created another die cut, a blank one, and I'm going to adhere the 2 together to create one sturdier piece. For this, I'm going to use Altenew glue. I have not used this product before. This is my first time using it. I'm going to test it out and see if I like it. I do like that it has this cap that closes the nozzle of the glue, although at first the cap was kind of getting in the way a little bit, but then I learned to kind of hold it in place with my finger while I was applying the glue. So usually I like to use my Barely Art glue, but I was sent this glue from Altenew and I decided I need to give it a try. And I will say that I do like this glue. It's nice and strong. It's a little bit more liquidy in my experience than the Barely Art. I had plenty of time with this glue while I was making this card. You can see that this is a large die cut and I did not really have to rush. When applying this glue, I didn't have to worry about the glue drying, and I just overall have a positive experience with this glue so far. And here is that little cap. You just place it over the nozzle so that your glue is not drying and the nozzle is not getting clogged. Okay, our die cut is now ready. We can start assembling our card. Here is the card I made before I started filming this video. And for this card, I used colored cardstock for the background. This is the Mountain Pine cardstock from Altenew. I love rich cardstock colors like this, and I couldn't be more excited to use it. I'm going to attach my die cut onto my panel. I have a white cardstock panel cut to 3 1/4 by 6 1/4 inches, and I'm attaching my die cut temporarily using the satin tape. I'm using the card that I already created as a guide so that the card that I'm creating now is going to look pretty much identical or, as close as possible. With the die cut attached, I'm next using my scissors to trim some of the pieces off, and I will also use my paper trimmer to trim the die cut on that long edge. I'm not tossing any of these leftover little bits. In fact, I'm going to reuse them and fill the frame of my card in to have additional apples on my card. This is a neat trick. The image that we created is nice and large, so we can cut it into multiple pieces. We can cut it into 2 pieces or even 3 pieces if you're making a smaller card. and use those pieces to, first of all, change the look of the die cut, but also create a fuller background. If you look at this card, you might think that I ink blended this twice, that I created 2 die cuts, but in fact, I only made 1. I snipped it apart, and I used that leftover piece to fill the background of my card in. I used glue to adhere the little leaves onto my background, and next I'm going to use foam tape. This is the thinner foam tape from Altenew, to foam mount the 2 larger die cuts onto my background. I want to have a little bit of dimension there. I always do this. Using foam adhesive always makes my cards look better. There's something special about it. So I went ahead and I used foam adhesive to adhere these onto the background. You will notice that I have a little bit of a gap of empty space down at the bottom, and I left that there on purpose because I needed room for a sentiment. I went ahead and I stamped a simple sentiment, sending you warm hugs, and I just love the way this looks. There are many other sentiments included in this stamp set, or you can, pull a sentiment from your stash. I just wanted something simple that would not distract from the beauty of the die cut. I also have a card base created. This is a mini slimline card. This measures 3.5 by 6.5 inches. And I also cut a panel of that same beautiful green cardstock. My panel is slightly larger, and I just used double-sided adhesive and I adhered that onto my card base. I did that because I wanted to trim this panel once it was adhered onto the card. Often I would cut my panel to the same size as the card base and then just adhere that onto the front of the card base, but I'm not always perfect. The sizing is not always ideal, and the worst thing that can happen is your front panel can be, just a sliver too small than the card base, especially on the side where you have the fold of the card, and there's nothing you can do about it. You have to recreate the card. So to avoid that, I adhered a panel that was larger, and then I just trimmed everything down using my paper trimmer. Next, I'm going to use more foam adhesive tape and foam mount my panel onto the card base. So the front of the card is dark green, but the actual card base is white, and I have white on the inside to write my message. I am going to add glue to the foam adhesive, and this is a neat trick that I recently learned. You just add glue to the foam adhesive, and this way you have a little bit of wiggle room when you adhere the panel onto the front of your card. So in case something goes wrong, you have time to move it around. I'm also going to embellish my card using mother of pearl gems. And the way I like to do this sometimes, not always, but sometimes, if I'm not sure about the placement of the gems, I will take my scissors and I will cut the gems out and will place them onto my background with the backer still on. So this is what I'm doing. I'm using scissors. I'm cutting a little, I'm cutting the gems out. I know how many gems I need because I'm recreating the gem placement that I have on the other card. That's what I did for the other card, actually. Right now, I probably don't need to do this. I could just adhere them directly, but I wanted to show you this trick. If you're ever not sure where you want to place your gems, just cut them out from the carrier sheet, place them with the carrier sheet on your project, see if you like that, move your gems around, and then once you're happy with the placement, peel them off from the carrier sheet, and that is going to save you a whole lot of trouble. So this is a look at the 2 cards I have for you today, created on a white and colored background. I would love to know if you're team colored cardstock or if you're team white cardstock. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining me. Love you guys, and I'll see you again next time.